Hello, beautiful beings. It's Alice. Welcome back to the channel. It's great to have you here. And I deeply appreciate your interest, but don't take me too seriously if you don't want to. Mostly because I can't be serious anymore, and also because I'm not a coach or anything like that. Well, actually, I'm nobody. And what I share here is just a perspective, and of course, what I really want to share is love. And today, I would like to talk about something really interesting, in my opinion. In my experience, discovering one's true nature can happen gradually. It can occur in small episodes at different stages of your life, and during those episodes, there is often a spontaneous shift in your usual perspective, which may also be triggered by certain external events, but not necessarily so. In my case, it happened a few times, apart from a couple of powerful meditation experiences, but I'm not going to talk about them now. And well, the first episode is one of my early childhood memories, and it happened when I suddenly wondered how I began. At that point, I felt in my body that there was something huge and impossible to grasp attached to that question. And then I just forgot about it for a few years. The next experience, which happened when I was in my early 20s, was when, oh my gosh, it's going to sound a bit crazy. It happened when I was walking down the street, and at one point I heard someone say my name in my head, and I felt a pull to look at the tree I was passing by. I instantly knew it was the tree that was kind of talking to me. It felt like it wanted me to look through the gaps between the branches at the sky, and that made me realize that I was overflowing with love. It felt like I was the source of love that couldn't stop and needed to flow and be shared. It felt extremely sweet, like being deeply, deeply in love with someone romantically. But there was no one in particular. Everything I could see around me, like trash containers and the ragged homeless person rummaging through one of them, and those grey Soviet style buildings, like really ugly buildings surrounding me, all of it felt precious and beautiful. It didn't matter if it was clean or dirty, or if it looked nice or ugly. Everything was more than worthy of the love that was flowing through me. However, it didn't last long, and to tell you the truth, despite that unconditional love, I found it hard to process. It was really hard to process that insane intensity on a physical level. If it hadn't stopped at that point, I probably would have exploded and died. And it was really surprising to realize at that moment that we all probably had love in excess. And if we had access to it, we would actually struggle to find someone needy to give it to. And well, if we continue thinking about it, we could arrive at some very interesting conclusions about why the mind is designed the way it is. Another episode took place, I believe, that same year, but we probably shouldn't take it into account since it occurred during an operation on my jaw and I was under a great deal of anesthesia. And altogether, it was a huge, because I was really in pain, and it was a huge shock to the system, which led me to feel that intense, unconditional love again. However, at that point, it was more motherly. I was looking at the doctor and the nurses moving around me, and I saw all of them as if they were just part of me, as if they were my biological children, even though they were way older than me. But well, probably we shouldn't consider this episode because, well, I was onto drugs. um, a few years later, I remember waiting at a bus stop. It was late and dark, and I was looking at the stars in the sky. I was thinking about how wonderful it was to be able to see the sky and the stars in the city amidst this urban, matter-oriented, fussy and stressful life. It's not always easy to see the stars in the city. And what happened a bit later felt very weird and uncomfortable. It came with a sudden thought. I thought, if I die now, this endless sky will probably remain. So will the knowing of it. But who will be knowing it if I'm dead? It felt so weird, so confusing and scary that I dismissed those thoughts and moved on with my usual activities as the bus finally arrived. And then in 2021, after having read Reality Transurfing, which helped me in so many ways, my underlying quest was to understand what the author of Reality Transurfing really meant in one of his books when he implied that the answer to the question, who am I, was simply me. I wasn't too obsessed with that back then, but somehow I felt it was something substantial to think about. Yet, on a conscious level, I was still too busy with my trauma bonded relationship, and my takeaways from the reality transurfing books were mostly related to adjusting my interactions with my partner. So one day, my ex boyfriend and I were watching one of the episodes of Better Call Saul. I find it quite hilarious that a moment of deep revelation took place while I was watching something related to the Breaking Bad series. Sounds quite symbolic, huh? And at that point, I was already more into spirituality and wholesome content. Although I had been a big fan of crime movies and series, as well as true crime documentaries, that interest had faded. However, Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul were exceptions. They have always been very special to me because they are far more profound than just crime stories. But well, I don't really think it had to do with what happened to me on that day. So while watching that episode about the complicated relationship between the main character and his brother, it suddenly popped into my mind. Of course, it's me. I'm me. What else can I be? It's obvious. That felt like huge understanding, but now I know it was not yet fully it. There was still search and doubt and needing to understand more. And the last episode took place a few months before my self realization. I remember recording an audio for my Russian students I had back then. Well, it actually was a video because for technical reasons, it was easier for me to record a video and edit it on my phone and then extract the sound from it. Some crazy technical stuff, long to explain. I also needed sound isolation, so I put my head under a duvet. Now that I think about it, the image is quite funny. I was kneeling on the floor by my bed, and I was also wearing glasses. Um, I believe we all can agree that the setting was just perfect for any spiritual insight. Why not? And after the video was recorded, I sat down to edit out some parts of it, and I focused on the image. It was a dark screen, which was logical because I had recorded it undercover. But the funny thing was that there were two two white spots, and those were the reflections of the of the white circle of the record button in each of my lenses and my glasses. And just it's so funny now. Those two shiny spots were looking, at me like someone's eyes. They were just staring at me from nowhere, from the darkness, because I couldn't see my face. That was just those two two spots, two recording buttons, and so those shiny eyes were just looking at me from the darkness, and that invoked some feeling slash knowing in my body, like, God, this is what I am. I'm just an observer. And that experience gave me a sensation of expansion in my body. And that felt a bit unsettling and powerful at the same time. So you see, this stuff can happen to you in any circumstances and when you least expect it. Soon after that, I discovered non duality and finally understood what exactly I needed. So the search continued a little longer until, as I said, when full separation from the character takes place, your search is over. If there is still a need for clarification, reading yet another book, there is probably something left for you to unveil about your true nature sometime later. When you break free for real, as I feel it, and at least this is how it was in my case, you naturally need to remain and operate from your sovereignty. You just know what you need to know, and the human part is still there, with most of its settings and imperfections, so to speak. It doesn't become a superhuman, but even their limited mind now knows that you are the answer to all their questions in terms of who they are. Another thing that becomes active when you break free fully is that you do not really need to be understood anymore. In the past, I would feel sad and extremely lonely because even when I tried to explain my views and feelings, I knew they would seldom be understood. I would even get offended, even though it was like being angry with a tomato because it wasn't an orange. What I know now is just impossible to comprehend intellectually. It can only be felt. That's why it's all about pointers. But there is no more sadness, no need to be heard, seen, or to be believed. You know what you know, and that's more than enough. Besides, after the external search is over, what happens next is an inward unfolding, which only makes you even more self sufficient from the human perspective, but without losing the ability to socialize. What's more, now you are able to do it with love, respect, and acceptance. So, these are the insights I had throughout my life prior to finally sinking back into the being. And what about you? Have you experienced moments of deeper revelations? Feel free to share them in the comments. Have a nice now.